Hello everyone, it's Jeff Pettis again, continuing my presentation for the new 2P. We were just talking about multiliteracies, new literacies, and the engagement that can arise from that. Now we're talking about radical change texts, and I mentioned that connectivity and interactivity through collaboratively designed projects are part of this re-envisioned course. So one thing that I've added in is that students will have the opportunity to write connected stories, both in a diagnostic, informative sort of capacity, as well as an assessment of their learning at the end of the short stories unit. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. They'll also have the opportunity to create interactive choose-your-own-adventure stories using both print and digital media. They'll be exposed to nonlinear web quests in terms of research, and really we'll be thinking about how to get away from linear text, start to finish, read this novel, that sort of thing. And all of these will also be incorporated into the writerly practices of the course, and we'll talk about that in a second. So when I talk about producing radical change texts, we're looking at producing new summative assignments. So we don't have to get rid of the old ones. The former options remain, both the linear story and the formal argument. All of those are still part of my short story unit, but I'm broadening up the curriculum to bring in more students and make it a bit more accessible. So the ways that radical change text theory have influenced my assignment here, number one is that students can choose to work as a team of 3, and they're going to produce 3 stories that all connect with one another. So it might mean that the stories feature the same characters. Maybe there's some plot overlap. You see it from a different perspective in each of their stories, and you see some key moments and the response of 3 different characters. Or maybe it's part of a series, and somebody writes the first one, second one, somebody writes the second, somebody writes the third. And then the other option is that students can produce a choose-your-own-adventure story that promotes interactivity from their audience. So what that means is that they would probably have to make a website or some sort of digital media that allows students to click through what their story options are to see where the story goes next. So you can't really see it over here, but I've started to draft some assignment sheets for this course. I'm just going to get away from that for a second, and we'll look over here at the assignment sheet. So I've given some context for the assignment. If anyone's interested in getting the digital copies of this, just let me know. I'll be happy to email it to you. So what we're looking at is the same things that we've done before, but with some extra stuff added in. So I've got the first option here. The students fill in a graphic organizer for their story. They write a story that's about 2 pages long, and then they label and identify aspects of the story. So things like they have to label the inciting force and that sort of thing. And you'll see that for the original options, I have a rubric that I filled in with my expectations for their short stories, but even that is going to change when we consider radical change texts. So here is the second option that was originally part of the assignment. Again, the rubric is completed for them, and for this option, they're looking at a short story of their own choosing, filling in a graphic organizer, and writing 2 paragraphs about it in a formal way. So with our new options, one of them, as I mentioned, is having the students write 3 stories, one written by each member of the group, and all of the stories have to connect. And I do expect that they still fill in a graphic organizer to plan that. However, you'll notice that the criteria here is very cursory. In my rubric, I have a couple rough ideas, but I intended to define the rubric more clearly with my students in collaboration with them. So I have some rough ideas. For example, the factual coherence between the stories developed. They have to make sense together. They have to understand the relationship between the stories and show that. But I'm not quite sure where this is headed yet. So it'll be a bit of an experiment in the first year to see what really makes for a good sequence of stories. And then similarly for the other option, I expect that they know something about how the plot arc develops, but again, it'll be tricky to develop this with the students in the next